Welcome to our presentation today. We're going to go a little bit more in depth about what you actually learn about in engineering and how you can get prepared for that. So I saw a lot of you are in grade 11, which is great. It's a perfect time to be planning for this with what courses you're going to take in grade 12 and learning a little bit more about what engineering is all about. So thank you everyone for joining us. We are recording this presentation today, but I do want to also let you know that you can ask questions at any point in the chat. So if you click on the purple tab in the bottom right-hand corner, you can click the chat bubble and you can ask any questions you have as I'm going through the presentation. I do have a current student here with me today as well, so she'll be around at the end to help answer any questions that you have from a student perspective. But what I'm going to do is kind of present all of the details and information about the presentation, and then we'll open it up for lots more questions at the end. So again, thank you for being here today. My job is to help students that are interested in coming into UBC engineering, and so that's kind of part of the reason that we're here today. So hopefully you'll enjoy this presentation and get some good information out of it. So what I want to start off with is those first year courses. So when you come into UBC engineering, and if you do have questions about admissions or things like that, we have the previous presentations we've done on our events and visits website, so you can check it out there, or on the UBC Engineering YouTube channel. So I'm not going to go too much into admissions today, but if you aren't sure about that piece, you can definitely check it out for our previous presentations. But what I do want to jump into is right into what a first year student would be taking in engineering. Now there's a couple things on this page. It shows you the course title, what the course is kind of about, the credits or the number of credits that courses are. So basically in your first year, most students will take 37 credits. That's not too important of information that you need to know just yet. But one thing that I will point out is whether or not a course is in your STT. So the STT is the standard timetable, and it's actually a really great opportunity for students in engineering because it basically puts you in a cohort with other students. So there's other programs at UBC that have different kind of cohort options. So there's science one and arts one and things like that. And engineering doesn't have that because we basically already have those cohorts as part of STTs or standard timetables. So basically when you're registering for courses in first year, all of your courses are already planned out except for your humanities, which is essentially just like an arts option course, and your Words 150, which is essentially your English type of course. So we're going to dive a little bit more into what these courses are and the main kind of categories of those courses. So you're going to take 3 math in your first year, and now you're probably already taking math in high school. You might not have taken calculus yet, but you're going to do differential and integral calculus. And then you're also going to move into Math 152, which is a little different. So you've probably taken some algebra courses before. And this course specifically is going to focus on things like matrices, vectors, complex numbers. So you might have seen some of those courses in high school or similar things in high school already. These ones are really going to dive in a little bit deeper into those courses. The other big one in first year is physics. So physics, you actually have 3 courses plus a lab. So for your physics courses, you have your Physics 157 and Physics 158. Those are going to cover things like thermodynamics, waves, circuits, electricity and magnetism. It's likely an extension of what you've done in high school physics, but it gets a little bit more complicated. For example, something that you might look at in Physics 157 is the efficiency of heat engines. So just as a quick example. Physics 159 is the lab that you do. So it is more experimental problems where you're given kind of a problem or task, and then you actually have to create the procedure and solve that problem. So a simple example of that might be that you're told that you have to measure the air pressure in the room, and you have to kind of work out how you're going to do that. Obviously, you're given lots of information about how to do it, but you have to design your own procedure and work through that piece. Now, Physics 170 is looking at mechanics. So high school, you might have done problems with pulleys. So you might have done a problem with pulleys using one string, but now you're kind of doing that same problem, but using 3 strings instead. It's going to have things like free body diagrams, calculating the forces on an object, and things like that. So that's kind of a brief introduction of the physics piece. But then since you're in applied science and engineering, the courses that you're going to take are also going to be specifically related to engineering. So those last courses that I saw are actually very similar to the science courses that someone in science might take. But you're also going to take some applied science courses, which is engineering. So you'll take the Introduction to Engineering course, AppSci 100 and AppSci 101, as well as AppSci 160. So in AppSci 100 and 101, you are going to do lots of project courses, lots of hands-on coursework. You're basically designing projects, learning the engineering design cycle while you do that. And you're really using all of that math and physics knowledge that you're gaining to solve problems and determine how a design will eventually behave. So for example, in physics, you might learn a little bit about forces on objects and the rigidity of structures and things like that. And then you'll actually have projects in AppSci 100 and 101 where you have to apply that knowledge to solve those problems. Now, AppSci 160 is a little bit different. It actually focuses on programming. So it's an intro to programming course. You'll learn to code in C language, and it basically assumes that you've never taken any programming courses before. So the good news is that you don't need to have any background in programming in order to come into engineering. And depending on what program in engineering you go into, you might not need to do very many programming courses at all, or you might do a lot depending on your program. Now, some other pieces that I just wanted to point out that I always hear from when I talk to lots of current students is things they learned about that they didn't really think they would. And so communication is a big one because engineers are always working as part of a team. In school, you're working in teams all the time for your project courses. Out of school, you're working in teams when you're really solving problems and working to make the world a better place. So communication is actually a really big one that engineers deal with all of the time, and it's something that you need to be good at. So you'll have different courses will teach you different things about communication, but you'll learn lots about writing, about things like technical reports. You'll learn things like giving an elevator pitch, so pitching your idea in 1 minute or less. All of those sorts of things are all involved in engineering. And the other thing that you get throughout your whole degree is design and hands-on work. So you are going to work on those design projects throughout your degree. You're going to get hands-on experience throughout your degree. And basically all of that kind of culminates in the Capstone Project, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So before we move on further, I do want to mention a little bit about our programs. So if you've seen some of our presentations before, you'll probably be familiar with our programs. As you would have seen, all first-year students take the same courses. So we actually call that our foundational first year. And that's because you're taking all of those courses that are part of the program. And then at the end of first year is when you are going to choose which specialization you're going to go in and continue in. So we have 14 programs at the Vancouver campus. We have 4 programs at the Okanagan campus. Those are denoted by a star next to them. So there's civil, electrical, and manufacturing, and mechanical. And so you'll start and learn about all the same sort of things, and once you specialize into your program is when you'll start getting kind of more specific into those areas. Now, we don't have time to go through all of that. It would probably take me hours to really talk about all of the courses you take in all of those programs. But if you are really curious, I would recommend that you check out our websites. Each of our programs have their own website and will list the courses required as part of that program. So that's a great way to kind of explore and see what types of courses you might take in one of those programs. So I just wanted to remind you of that we have some really unique programs, that we have tons of choices that will influence what you're going to learn. We're kind of focusing on the general pieces. So looking at some projects that our students actually get to work on, the first pictures here I have are of designing a claw. So you'll see that the student has worked on a project board. You'll see some of their initial drawings of what the claw will have looked like right in the center of the screen, and then on the table is the actual claw that they made out of metal. So this is one of the first courses that you take. This is AppSci 101, and you are working on communication because you need to present a poster board with all of that information. You also need to present to anyone that stops by your table about what sort of claw you picked, why you designed it that way, how you made it. There's another challenge as part of this event as well, where the claw actually has to pick up certain things, and so that's where you're getting your hands-on experience as well. And now even this year in first year, even though things were online, they still actually had students create the claw. The first year students got these little care packages of Arduinos. You can see the Arduino a little bit closer in this picture, where they actually just had to use, instead of using metal sheeting, they might have used cardboard or other materials available to them at home, but they still were able to use the Arduino piece to create the claw and still have that sort of competition. Now, some of the other projects that we have are called Capstone Projects, and so that's where the end of your degree will really culminate in what you've learned. You're working with industry in a lot of cases and developing these really exciting projects that you're working on. So this picture here is from one of our design and innovation days. And so this is where students can showcase their capstone project of what they've worked on. And so this group of students actually worked with Triumph. So Triumph is basically Canada's particle accelerator, and their specific programs, the proton and neutron irradiation facilities, is who they worked with on designing this piece that they have there. It's called the Podium. This is another example of students at Design and Innovation Day. So you can see that they actually designed a cutting guide for helping with surgeries and things like that. So you can see that they have a model skull there and their poster in the background again. So again, they would have been doing a lot of communication pieces as part of this to design their poster, to present about their project, but also a lot of that design and hands-on coursework to actually create the project, and that's something that they work on pretty consistently with throughout the year in their last year of studies. Now the next one is another example of these sort of capstone projects. So this is a poster that you can see a little bit more clearly to kind of understand what this group of students is doing. So this is from the chemical engineering program, and so they actually were looking at direct air carbon capture and storage, like it says, and so they designed a way for carbon capture directly from the air, a way to store it. That's what you can kind of see in the middle, that sort of process. They designed where it would go, how it would work. All of those sorts of things was part of their project. So very, very intense project where they're doing a lot of research, working with industry, and this is something that you might see actually industry pursue and do something along these lines. So this is one example. I did highlight the website at the bottom there, and so if that is something that you'd like to check out more of, you can actually go to that website and listen to the students explain this whole project. So it's about 5 minutes long or so, and they can actually explain what this whole project is about, and there's a lot of other projects on that page as well that you can check out. Now this one is an example of a previous project from the mechanical engineering department. So this one is a little bit more focused on the biomedical stream in mechanical engineering. And so what they actually did was designing another sort of device like that other picture that I showed, where doctors can use this device to ensure that when they are working on the projects that it is going to help them be better at essentially doing the surgeries that they're trying to do, and kind of working on all of those pieces. So Again, just another example of that. And I want to take a minute to show you in a pretty cool video of some projects that happened. So just give me 1 second to get that video up. All right, so that was just a project from the engineering physics program from this past summer. So normally they would have it in person, but this summer obviously things were online, and so they had students actually submit those videos of their robots following the track. So that's just one example of students kind of working on some of those projects while things have been online as well. So basically they were given tasks, those robots had to follow those black lines on the floor, and then they had to collect those cans along the way. So that's kind of one example. All right, so that's kind of what I wanted to present to you about some of the things that you'll learn in engineering. So to give you a sense of what are some of the projects that you might get to work on, as I mentioned, we have 14 programs, so it would take us forever to go through that. We only have another 10 minutes or so to get through this presentation, so I don't have time to go through all of that. But I do want to quickly mention a little bit more about how to get prepared, and then we'll have some time for questions. So there's really a few key points that are on this page of how to get prepared. So there are specific required courses that you need to get into UBC engineering. As I mentioned, those are in previous recordings that we already had, so we're not going to go through these specifics of admission for that. But basically at the grade 12 level, it'll be English, pre-calculus, physics, and chemistry are the required courses. However, we do also recommend taking some courses like calculus, and so that's not necessarily a requirement from the faculty. You can still go into the same math courses as everyone else if you only have pre-calculus and not calculus. But many of our students do recommend that they found taking calculus in high school helped make them more successful in their first year of studies. So that's a recommendation from other current students. Now, the other thing that we've heard from other students and their experiences is that taking AP, IB, or honors courses can really be useful, as you'll have a heavier course load or heavier workload in those courses. And they'll also give you the experience of doing large-scale exams, which you'll have in engineering. Sorry, I just got a... Is there something wrong with my Wi-Fi? Is everyone able to hear me okay? If you can give me just a yes in the chat. Yes, okay, perfect. Anika, if you are having issues, you might want to try just closing the browser and coming back in. It looks like everyone else is able to hear me okay. Thank you so much. Perfect. So those AP, IB, and honors courses are not required courses for engineering, but they can give you some advantages. So one example is that you can get first year credit if you've taken those courses. So that means that that might be some university level courses that you don't have to take. But also they'll give you that experience of having a really heavy workload compared to other courses that you might take in high school. So it could be a benefit for you. If you're not able to take those courses though, that's okay. You might also want to check out the curriculum of AP courses just to see what's covered in them, and that might help you get really prepared for first year. So there's a lot of books at the library that cover AP curriculum. You might be able to find them online, but definitely from libraries, there are lots of options to kind of look at that curriculum, and I've heard from students that that's a really good option to kind of just look through and see if you kind of have an understanding of that or learn some additional pieces, you know, in those areas related to physics, chemistry, and math specifically. The other thing I hear all the time from current students is to really work on developing good study habits. So in high school, you might be doing really well. You might be getting by and not needing to do a lot of studying. If you are, then that's very lucky for you, but the course load in university is going to be a little bit more difficult. So what that means is that you will need to study even if you didn't have to in high school. You will probably spend more time on your classes outside of the classroom than you typically had. So a lot of our courses are taught where you're given the information in class, and your assignments and everything like that all need to be done outside of the classroom. So just developing good time management skills, good study habits are things that you can do in high school now that will really help support you once you get to university. So there's one more thing that I want to mention. We have a new series with our Engineering Stories channel, which is a YouTube channel called Behind the Career. So today I've talked a lot about kind of what students study in engineering, but if you want to see more about what it's like to actually work as an engineer, our team has worked really hard to interview a lot of recent graduates doing some really cool work. So working with things like Tesla and Apple, like you see. The person in the bottom left corner is helping design the stadium for FC Barcelona. So there are some really cool things happening from our alumni, and this is kind of one way that you can check out what a day in the life of working as an engineer might look like as well. Perfect. So that is it for my presentation. So we have lots of time for some questions still. So I will invite Gloria to turn on her mic to help with answering questions.
Hello.
Gloria, maybe I'll get you to do a quick introduction of yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gloria. I am an engineering student at UBC, and this is my second year there. I'm still in the general program though, but I have experience both in person and online taking the engineering courses.
Perfect. Thanks, Gloria. So if anyone has any questions about kind of what Gloria has studied so far, about any other questions about UBC engineering, we're both happy to answer any of the questions that you might have, or anything about the student experience as well. So Gloria just mentioned she hasn't actually chosen her program yet. So she has been at UBC, but she's not in a program yet. Do you want to tell us about what program you're hoping to get into and why, maybe?
Sure. So I'm thinking I want to go into either integrated engineering or computer science. Computer science because I really liked the AppSci 160 course, which Erin talked about, which is the programming course. So I've done some programming since then, and I think it's really fun. And integrated engineering is interesting because you get to pick different courses that you take, so you can kind of make a more specific or general, if you wanted, degree for yourself.
Awesome, thanks. And just a reminder to everyone in here, if you do have any questions, please use the chat. So you can access that by clicking on the purple tab in the bottom right-hand corner and then clicking on the chat bubble, and you can ask those questions. So if anyone else has any questions for myself or Gloria, we have about 5 minutes left in our session today. So again, please feel free to ask about any specializations that you might be interested in, any experiences that Gloria might have had so far, or anything else about UBC engineering. So Gloria, there's a question about, have you lived in residence, and if so, how was your experience?
Yeah, so last year when class was in person, I was living in residence in Totem Park, and that was really fun because I actually a lot of my neighbors were also in engineering, first year engineering, so I kind of made some friends that way, and we could walk to class together, and it was a nice experience, not having to transit. But now I'm at home.
Yes, perfect. So the next question is, I was wondering if you could speak a bit more about the typical course load of an engineering student and whether most engineering students have enough free time for clubs, design teams, etc., as well as how much in-class time and study/homework time students have a week on average. Long question. Okay, so Gloria, why don't you start out with, if you can let us know about kind of being able to manage your course load and also having additional free time for clubs and design teams and things like that.
Yeah, so I actually split up my first year so that my course load was a little bit lighter. I know that it definitely is possible to be in multiple clubs and design teams and like keep the course load. I knew some girls who were in like 2 design teams and a club, and they were still doing all the courses. But typically you take 3 lecture hours per class a week, and then if you have a lab, that'll be probably a few extra hours here and there. And then depending on the course, they tell you to spend like 8 to 10 hours of studying or doing homework outside of the class in order to succeed. So I guess you need to look at your schedule and just see how many courses you have, and then multiply by, I guess 13 would be a good number if they're engineering courses rather than humanities courses, hours.
Perfect. Thanks, Gloria. And I will mention on our Engineering Stories channel, we have tons of videos going over this. Gloria has some videos from last year about time management and how she kind of organized her classes and all those pieces as well. So definitely check out those videos on Engineering Stories because there is a lot of info on there about kind of all of these pieces as well from different perspectives. The next question is if we would advise skipping Words 150 if you can transfer credits from IB or AP. So yeah, if you have transfer credits for English 112 or equivalent, that will be that will cover your Words 150 requirement. And then that's definitely something that you can skip if you're interested in. We recommend if you're going to plan to use your credits for anything other than your English requirement or Words 150 or your humanities course, that you do talk to an advisor just to kind of make sure that you're going to be set up for success. One thing that we see is students that have credit for math. If you're taking a full year off of math, coming back in to do math in your second year is really difficult if you haven't done it for a full year. So there are some things that we'll advise around that. So I think that kind of also answers, there's a couple other questions about using AP courses. So really check with an advisor once you're admitted and coming to UBC, and we'll help you with that. Course registration usually happens kind of in the summer before you enter, so you have lots of time to kind of figure all of that out. There's a question, Gloria, about if you did anything extra to kind of prepare in high school for coming into engineering that I hadn't mentioned.
Yeah, I guess in high school, my high school didn't offer any AP or IB courses, but I took a bunch of extra classes in high school. I took, I think, 10 classes rather than the 7 that everybody else was taking, just to, I don't know, keep all my doors open. And it kind of gave me a heavier course load and kind of trained me to really like sit down and do my work and have good time management. So that was one thing that I did because my school didn't offer APIB.
Perfect. And kind of growing on that, do you want to talk about how your transition from high school to university was? Maybe what some key differences from university and high school are?
Yeah, so I think like high school, you do a lot of your work at school, and I mean there's homework and stuff outside of school as well, but in university, it's really just like you go to lectures for a few hours a week, and a lot of work is done on your own, and you really need to get through all your homework and do all these pre-readings, and it's a lot of self-learning that you need to do in university, I find. Another thing I noticed is it's way more difficult than high school, and me and my friends found that we needed to sleep a lot more, which is something we didn't really expect. Like we used to get by sleeping 7 or 8 hours when we were in high school, but then when we were in university, we would have to take a bunch of naps because that just wasn't cutting it because our brain was working so much harder. So there's like just a bunch of little things like that. You might need to like adjust your lifestyle a bit and your schedule a bit, but it's definitely it's not that bad of a jump.
Perfect. And UBC does have lots of supports like Jumpstart and Imagine Day, which are orientation pieces to really help you with that transition, to make sure that we can kind of support you as much as possible coming into our program. There's a question about what lectures are like. So lectures are basically the component of a class that you're going to sit in a classroom and listen to the teacher. Most of the lectures are going to be somewhere between 60 students and close to 300 students, depending on the course. So it really depends. All of our courses in first year, if they have a large lecture, they are going to have some sort of smaller component as well. So whether that's a studio, a lab, a tutorial, or something along those lines. So you do have those smaller pieces, and those will be much smaller than a larger lecture. There are also some videos about what an actual lecture setup kind of looks like on our Engineering Stories channel. So I do recommend to really understand it, to go check out those videos, as that will help you kind of get a better sense. Anything that you want to add about what lectures are like, Gloria?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the prof, but typically you just go in for an hour to an hour and a half, and they go through their slides and you take notes, and sometimes you have like a clicker with you, which is they can put a multiple choice question on the screen and you can answer, and so there's a bit of an interactive component there. Sometimes there's quizzes. Basically, it's just like a class in high school.
But probably more people. But
yeah, way more people.
Perfect. So the next few questions are all kind of similar, so I'll try and answer those all together. So when you apply to UBC, you are going to select the degree that you're applying to. So UBC Engineering is the applied science degree. You'd be doing the Bachelor of Applied Science, which is just the name of our engineering degree at UBC. So when you apply, which will be sometime in your grade 12 year usually, applications open sometime in September of your grade 12 year, and the early round offer deadline is December 1st typically, and then the final deadline is typically January 15th of your grade 12 year. So that's kind of the process. Again, we have a lot more in-depth videos about admissions, so if you're looking for those details, definitely check out one of our admissions videos. When you apply into our engineering program, you'll be going into that foundational first year that I talked about in the beginning. And so you'll learn all those basic courses that I mentioned, and then at the end of first year is when you'll choose your specialization. So hopefully that kind of helps answer your question. There's no interview that you need to do. There will be a personal profile, it's called, which is just basically answering some short essay questions about your program. We're basically out of time, but there's 2 more questions that I'll answer quickly. So students taking a full course load will usually take 6 or 7 courses per term. So one term is from September through December, and then the second term is January through April. And so you'll usually be in 6 to 7 courses a term for that. And then the last question is about co-ops. We didn't really talk too much about co-op today because we were really focusing on the academics. Let me just say there are so many other opportunities available at UBC that we didn't even get a chance to talk about today, like design teams and clubs and co-op, and so many more things to get involved in. So if you do choose to do co-op, you will apply into co-op in your second year. So again, it's a decision you don't have to make for a long time. And it will extend your degree by a year, and it will provide you with up to 20 months of work experience during that time. All right, the last question I will answer is, are you able to switch to a different program if you don't think engineering is for you? So if you do come into engineering, if that was your first choice program and you get accepted, then you will start that program. If you decide at the end of first year that engineering is not for you, or throughout the year, you can apply into other faculties at UBC. You do need to be competitive and meet the competitive average for those programs, but most of your courses will transfer as science credits. So you would still be eligible for other programs like potentially arts or science if you decide that engineering is not the place for you. So you do have that option. Again, though, you do need to make sure that you're competitive, meeting the competitive average that those programs require. So if you are thinking of transferring, I would recommend that you talk to the advising offices in those programs just to go through all of those details with them. All right, Gloria, any last piece of anything about kind of what maybe your favorite thing that you've learned so far in engineering, or kind of your favorite part about UBC engineering so far?
Yeah, I think the favorite thing that I learned was coding. I found that really fascinating. And then over the summer, I had a job where I was coding and I was able to pick up all these different languages really quickly because of the base that I had gotten in AppSci 160. So I'd say that was my favorite thing that I learned. And what was the second question? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh, just what your favorite thing of UBC engineering has been.
I guess the community, when everybody's taking the same courses, it's easy to like talk to people about your different classes when you're, I guess, you know that everybody's in the same boat and you can sit in one class and talk about a quiz from another class to the person next to you and they know what you're talking about. So it's really easy to make friends that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Gloria, and for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you that joined us. I'm just going to put on some information on the screen before you head out. So Gloria, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your help this evening. And for anyone, if you do have extra questions after today, you are welcome to send me an email. My email is on the screen right now at erin.fair@ubc.ca. And I also have some websites on here, so if you're looking for more details about admissions specifically, definitely check out whileu.ubc.ca. And we have some engineering specific information on those two engineering pages there. And again, our YouTube channel, Engineering Stories, is such a great spot to check out videos about what lectures are like, what student life is like, all of those sorts of pieces. So I would encourage you to check out Engineering Stories, and especially our new series, that Behind the Careers series. So thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful evening.